Imagine a place so remote that the wind howls like a warning, where temperatures plummet to levels that can freeze exposed skin in minutes, and where the ground itself seems to swallow secrets whole. Deep in the vast, unforgiving wilderness of Siberia, buried beneath layers of permafrost and forgotten by time, lies a relic of the Cold War, an underground bunker complex sealed shut since the collapse of the Soviet Union. This isn't just any facility. We're talking about a classified installation rumored to have been part of the Soviet Strategic Defense Network, possibly linked to early warning systems or contingency command posts in the harsh northern regions. During the height of tensions between the East and West, the USSR constructed hundreds of such hardened sites across its territory, designed to withstand nuclear strikes and house personnel for months. Many were abandoned in the 1990s as budgets collapsed and priorities shifted, their heavy blast doors welded or bolted from the inside, contents left to the mercy of time and the elements that seeped in. In the modern era, specifically in the early 2020s, a joint Russian military operation brought a team of elite Spetsnaz operators from one of the GRU's special purpose brigades into one of these long-sealed bunkers. The mission was straightforward on paper: assess structural integrity, inventory any remaining sensitive materials, and ensure no unauthorized access had occurred over the decades. Satellite imagery had shown anomalies, unexplained heat signatures in winter, perhaps from decaying equipment or something else. Local reports from nearby indigenous communities spoke of strange lights and sounds emanating from the taiga. What the team encountered inside defied rational explanation. Over the course of several days, they documented experiences that challenged their training, their discipline, and their understanding of reality. These are hardened men, veterans of counterterrorism ops, reconnaissance in hostile territories, who don't scare easily. Yet what they described in their debriefs and private accounts speaks to something lingering in that bunker, something tied to the isolation, the darkness, and perhaps the echoes of lives cut short in a place built for survival, but abandoned to decay. Tonight, we're going to relay their story, drawn from first-hand testimonies shared anonymously through military channels. This is not urban legend or folklore. It's the account of professional soldiers who entered a haunted barracks sealed since the Cold War. What waited for them below the surface? Let's descend into the darkness. Chapter 1. The Insertion. My name is Sergei, call sign Volkov. I've been with the brigade for over 15 years. Chechnya, Syria, a few places I can't name. You learn to trust your training, your team, and nothing else. Superstition, that's for civilians. But this op changed things. We got the briefing in Novosibirsk. 8-man team, standard recon kit, AK-12s, suppressed sidearms, NVGs, thermal imagers, demolition charges if needed. The target was Bunker Complex 47K, buried under a ridge in the Krasnoyarsk Krai, Central Siberia, built in the late 1970s as a fallback command post for the Siberian Military District HQ, sealed in '92 after the Union fell. Orders came down to evacuate, lock it up, and forget it. No proper decommissioning, just abandonment. Fuel, rations, even some comms gear left inside to rot. Insertion was by Mi-8 Hilo at night. Dropped us 5 clicks out to avoid rotor wash kicking up snow. We tabbed in on snowshoes, temperatures well below -40. The entrance was a camouflaged blast door set into a hillside, half buried under decades of drift and overgrown with birch and pine. Local intel confirmed no human activity for 30 years. The nearest settlement was a small reindeer herding camp more than 50 kilometers away. Satellite passes had picked up odd heat blooms in winter, faint but persistent. Command wanted eyes on the ground. Volkov, anything on thermal? That was our lieutenant, call sign Orlov. Solid officer, never raised his voice, never needed to. Negative, sir, just cold rock and snow. We set shaped charges on the outer blast door. Controlled breach, minimal noise. These Soviet-era doors were built to take a near miss from a tactical nuke. It took 2 attempts to cut through the hinges. Inside the airlock chamber, the air was stale and bitingly cold, thick with undisturbed dust that hung in our headlamps like smoke. Ice crystals coated every surface. The inner door had been welded shut from the inside. That detail stuck with all of us. Whoever left last wanted no one following. We burned through the welds with thermic lances. When the door finally gave, a wave of trapped air rolled out, carrying a smell none of us could place at first. Rust, mold, old sweat, and something faintly sweet, like spoiled meat left too long in a freezer. We advanced in standard stack, lights cutting narrow cones through the blackness. The main corridor stretched ahead, wide enough for 2 men abreast, concrete walls scarred by time and moisture. Faded red lettering still clung to the paint. Rodina Previshevsego, motherland above all. Branch corridors led off to the living quarters. We cleared them methodically. The barracks wings were exactly as the last occupants had left them. Rows of triple bunks lined both walls, metal frames rusted but intact. Mattresses sagged under the weight of dust and ice. Lockers hung open, spilling out yellowed photographs, letters, packs of Belamorcanal cigarettes, and uniforms frozen stiff. One bunk had a small icon of St. Nicholas taped above the pillow. Another had a pin-up calendar stuck forever on August 1991. In the common area, tables were scattered with chess pieces mid-game, ashtrays full of ancient butts, and dog-eared newspapers announcing the failed coup in Moscow. Everything was preserved in the dry, freezing dark. Like a museum no one was meant to visit. "Place is a damn time capsule," muttered Ivanov, our breacher. Big guy, usually unflappable. We pushed deeper to the operations room and set up a temporary perimeter. Old analog consoles lined the walls, screens long dead, paper maps of NATO target packages still pinned in place under cracked glass. We ran portable power units to flood the space with white light and kill the shadows. The first hours were routine. We cataloged sensitive materials, photographed documents, checked for structural compromise. The generators were seized solid, no chance of restoring main power. We settled in for a multi-day stay, rotating watches, eating cold rations. I drew the middle watch. The bunker was silent except for the occasional creak of contracting metal or ice shifting overhead. I sat with my back to a console, rifle across my knees, scanning sectors with NVGs. Nothing moved. Nothing should have moved. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate boot heels on concrete, coming from the direction of the barracks wing we had cleared twice. I keyed the comms bead. "Orlov, you copying?" "Go." Movement. Barracks corridor. Footsteps. The team was up in seconds, weapons ready. Orlov and I advanced while the others covered. We swept the entire wing again, room by room, bunk by bunk. Empty. Dust undisturbed except for our own prints. But when we returned to the ops room, I noticed it. One of the lower bunks in the nearest bay. The mattress was depressed in the center, a clear, human-shaped indentation as though someone had just stood up. The dust around the edge was pushed outward in a perfect outline. No footprints leading to or from it. "Fatigue," Orlov said quietly. "Cold and confined spaces play tricks. Double watches from now on." We all nodded, but no one believed it. Not really. In a bunker sealed for over 30 years, with every entrance welded or bolted from the inside, who or what was walking the halls? Chapter 2. Echoes in the Barracks. I'm Alexei, point man on Volkov's team. Volkov got us inside and set the stage, but the real weight of the place settled in once we started mapping the living quarters. The complex was laid out across 3 main levels. Upper level for command and control, middle level held the barracks, mess hall, recreation areas, and medical bay. Lower level was storage, power generation, and reserve munitions. It had been designed to keep 200 men alive and operational for half a year after the balloons went up. In the end, it never saw war, just slow abandonment. We spent the first full day after entry pushing through the middle level, room by room, cataloging anything that might still be sensitive. The barracks halls were long and straight, lit only by our weapon lights and the portable LEDs we strung up. Triple bunks lined both walls like metal ribs. Footlockers sat at the end of each bed, most pried open decades ago by the last occupants packing out. Personal gear was everywhere. Razors, letters folded into triangles, faded photographs of wives and children back in European Russia, a few bottles of vodka frozen solid and cracked. One locker still had a uniform hanging inside, greatcoat and all, as if its owner meant to come back for it. The name tape read Starshий Lieutenant Kovalenko. Dust lay thick on the shoulders. I brushed it off without thinking. The fabric was stiff, cold as iron. "Careful what you touch," Orlov said behind me. "We don't know how stable the air is down here." Petrov, our medic, pulled a worn journal from another locker. He flipped through it under his red headlamp. Last entries are from late 91. Guy complains about delayed supply convoys, rumors of the coup in Moscow, then nothing. Final line, orders received, evacuate immediately, leaving equipment in place. God protect the motherland. Ivanov snorted. Typical. Brass panics. Grunts walk away with nothing but what they can carry. We all forced a laugh, but it died quick in the dead air. The mess hall was at the end of the main barracks corridor. Long metal tables bolted to the floor, benches the same. A serving counter led into a kitchen frozen in time. Pots still on burners, cans of Tushonka lined up like soldiers. Frost coated everything in a thick white fur. We set up our sleeping bags here because it was the largest open space and had only 2 entrances to cover. That night, we ran short watches, 2 men up at all times. The cold was constant, but manageable with modern kit. The silence was worse. No hum of ventilation, no distant generator thud, just our breathing and the occasional pop of ice contracting overhead. I woke suddenly, no transition from sleep, whispering. Low, urgent Russian from the far end of the hall, near the kitchen pass-through. They're cutting the budget again. We'll be here forever. No, the party will hold. We stay ready. 2 voices distinct, one older, authoritative, the other younger, almost pleading. I sat up slow, hand on my rifle. Across the hall, Petrov was already awake, eyes wide in the glow of his watch face. You hearing that? I whispered over comms. Affirm. Orlov answered from his bag. Positions. We moved quiet, stacking at the corner, lights off, NVGs down. The whispering continued, volume rising and falling like a bad radio signal. I pieced the corner, empty, tables undisturbed, frost patterns intact, no heat signatures, but on the nearest table, directly in our light beams, fresh breath melt had cleared perfect circles in the frost. 4 of them, like 4 men, had just been sitting there, heads bent in conversation. A chair was pulled out, dust scraped clean in an arc on the floor. Petrov knelt, ran a gloved finger through one circle. Still damp. Can't be more than minutes old. We cleared the kitchen anyway. Nothing. Back in the mess, the whispers had stopped. CO2 pockets, Petrov offered. Old air trapped, releases when we move around. Auditory. Hallucinations. No one argued, but no one slept easy after that either. Later, during Ivanov's watch, he woke us with a sharp hiss. Movement, far bunk row. We swept again. Empty. But when we passed one particular bay, Ivanov froze. That bottom bunk. Thermal bloom. Warm spot, human outline. I checked. Faint. But there. A patch maybe 5 degrees above ambient, shaped exactly like a man lying prone. It faded as we watched. Could be residual from one of us, Orlov said. But we all knew we hadn't been near that row since entry. We pulled security tighter, watches overlapping. The bunker was starting to feel less like an abandoned facility and more like something waiting. By morning, the tension was thick enough to cut. We had lower levels to clear, storage and power plant. But first, we had to pass through that same barracks corridor again. And this time, the scratches on the sealed armory door at the far end were waiting for us. Deep, desperate gouges on the inside face, as if something had tried for years to get out. Chapter 3. The Lower Levels. This is Dmitri, comms specialist on the team. By the end of the second day, the barracks level had already started to wear on us. The whispers, the warm spots, the breath marks on the frost. None of it added up, but we could still write it off as tricks of the environment. The lower level changed that. Access was through a wide stairwell at the rear of the mess hall, metal steps coated in a thick layer of ice that we chipped away with entrenching tools before descending. The handrails were rusted through in places. Flakes came off on our gloves like dried blood. Air grew noticeably heavier as we went down, stale, metallic, with a faint hydrocarbon bite from decades-old fuel residue. The lower level was purely utilitarian. No slogans on the walls, no personal touches, just long corridors lined with heavy steel doors, most dogged open. Storage bays held wooden crates stenciled in faded white, 7.6 Sudatsi 54R ball, 5.4539, RPG-7 rounds, demolition blocks, canned rations with 1989 expiration dates still shrink-wrapped on pallets. Everything was orderly, as if the quartermaster had stepped out for a smoke and never returned. We moved methodically, photographing batch numbers, checking for degradation. Petrov took air samples every few meters, watching his meter for CO, CO2, radon. Readings were elevated, but not immediately dangerous. Long-term exposure would mess with you, he said. Headaches, paranoia. Maybe that's all this is. Near the center of the level, we found the backup generator room. Massive Soviet diesels, fuel tanks half full of thickened gelled diesel. No chance of starting them without a full overhaul. Next to it was the sealed section none of the old blueprints had clearly labeled. The door was heavier than the rest, vault style with multiple dogs and a combination lock long since seized. Deep gouges scored the inner face, parallel sets of 4 and 5 lines, some ending in broken. Fingernails of metal curled back. Whatever made them had been frantic. Last crew panicking during evac, Ivanov asked, running a gloved finger along one furrow. Doesn't track, Orlov replied. The welds were on the outer doors. They sealed themselves out, not in. We cut the dogs with a portable plasma torch. The door swung inward with a shriek of corroded hinges. Beyond lay a smaller secondary barracks, officers' quarters, maybe 20 bunks in 2 rows. But it looked like a fight had torn through it. Mattresses ripped open, stuffing scattered and frozen stiff. Lockers overturned. Walls bore long smears of flaked brown that caught our lights like old blood. Petrov knelt, scraped a sample. Negative for hemoglobin, just iron oxide and mold. Could be condensation running down decades ago. But the air in here was different, thicker, oppressive. Our lights seemed dimmer, as though the darkness pushed back. Shadows lingered in corners longer than they should. I set up a relay booster to maintain comms with the surface team on the Hilo LZ. While calibrating, I caught a faint carrier wave on an old Soviet military band. Static mostly, but underneath it, fragmented words in Russian. Not our net. I logged it as interference. That night, we pulled back to the middle level to sleep, but the feeling followed us. Watches reported faint knocking from below, irregular, like someone testing the walls for hollow spots. No pattern, no Morse. Then the whispers returned, clearer than before. Not from the barracks this time. They rose through the stairwell, up from the lower level. Alexei, Dmitri, come down. It's safe now. My name, clear as day. Petrov's too. We checked the stairwell in force. Empty. But boot prints, our own size, modern tread, led down into the dark and stopped halfway, as if the maker had simply vanished. Orlov ordered no solo movement below until full light. We finished the sweep together, no splitting the team. Ivanov laughed too loud. What's the matter, sir? Afraid of ghosts in officer country? No one laughed with him. Next morning, we geared heavy and descended again. The plan was to clear the generator room fully, then tackle the ventilation shafts that honeycombed the entire complex. Massive ducts meant to recirculate air for months. But first, we had to pass that ruined secondary barracks one more time. And this time, something had rearranged the overturned bunks into a perfect defensive perimeter facing the door, as if whoever was down there was still waiting for an attack that never came. Chapter 4. Shadows and Whispers. I'm Petrov, the team medic. By the time we finished mapping the lower level, the bunker had stopped feeling like an abandoned facility and started feeling like something alive. Watching, waiting, and slowly tightening around us. After finding the rearranged bunks in the secondary officers' quarters, Orlov made the call to tackle the ventilation system next. The main ducts ran the length of the complex, large enough for a man to crawl through on hands and knees. They were the only unmapped sections left, and Command wanted confirmation that no breaches or unauthorized modifications had occurred over the decades. We entered in pairs. Volkov and me first, Ivanov and Alexei behind. The duct entrances were high on the walls of the generator room, grated covers long since rusted open. Inside, the metal was bitterly cold, frost thick enough to scrape off in sheets. Our breath plumed white, even through balaclavas. Lights reflected back dull and flat. The darkness here seemed to absorb illumination. We crawled single file, knees and elbows ringing dully on steel. The air tasted of old oil and something fungal. Every few meters, side branches split off to service different levels. Dust lay undisturbed except for faint trails, smudged, irregular, like something had dragged itself through years ago. Then Volkov stopped short ahead of me. His light froze on the duct wall. Graffiti, not the faded stenciled markings from construction. Fresh scratches, metal bright where the oxide had been gouged away. Block letters in Russian. Oni nie uszli. They didn't leave. The cuts were deep, deliberate. No tool marks, just fingernails or something harder. Recent, I asked. Days, maybe weeks, Volkov answered. No dust in the grooves. We pressed on. The whispers started again, but inside the ducts they were different, amplified, bouncing from every direction until it felt like the metal itself was speaking. Why did they abandon us? The war never came. We waited. We still wait. Full sentences now, overlapping voices. Male, all of them. Some young, some old. Accents from across the Union, Ukraine, Georgia, Baltic. I keyed comms. Orlov, you copying the audio? Negative. Clear on our end. But Volkov heard it too. We both did. We reached a main junction where 4 ducts converged. In the center, frost on the floor bore bare footprints, small, narrow, leading in a circle, and then nowhere. No exit trails. Just ending. We extracted fast, backs scraping the top of the duct. When we dropped back into the generator room, Ivanov was pale under his camo paint. While you were inside, he said, something moved the crates in the munitions bay, stacked them higher, defensive wall facing the stairwell. We checked. He wasn't wrong. Heavy ammo crates that would have taken 2 men to shift were now barricading the doorway, neat and precise. Back on the middle level, the activity escalated. Lockers we had closed were found hanging open. Boots from different bunks had been lined up in perfect formation in the corridor. Toes pointed toward the ops room like a silent honor guard. My thermal imager started picking up cold spots, sharp drops of 20-30 degrees below ambient, shaped unmistakably like standing figures. They held for seconds, then dissipated. Orlov finally broke protocol and reported anomalies to command via SatLink. The reply came back clipped. Environmental factors noted. Psychological stress probable. Complete inventory and structural survey. Hold position. That night, we barricaded the mess hall doors with tables and slept in shifts, weapons stacked. Our portable LEDs flickered without reason. The radios hissed with fragments of old Soviet military marches, faint, tinny, like a receiver left on in another room. Then the shadows moved, first peripheral, just shapes at the edge of vision in the barracks corridor. When you turned, nothing. Then bolder. I saw one clear as day, a soldier in an old greatcoat, collar up, standing at the far end of the bunk rows, face indistinct, but posture perfect, parade rest. I swung my light. Gone. But Ivanov saw it too. It saluted, he whispered. Looked right at the LT and saluted. Orlov didn't deny it. They never approached, never threatened, just watched, patrolled, like sentries who didn't know the war had ended 30 years ago. We stopped talking about hallucinations. We started talking about what happens when men are ordered to hold a post forever and the world forgets to relieve them. One more section remained, the command nucleus at the deepest point. After that, exfil. But none of us believed the bunker would let us leave that easily. Chapter 5. The final breach, Orlov here, lieutenant in charge of the team. Everything up to this point, the whispers, the moved objects, the shadows, could still be rationalized away if you tried hard enough. Infrasound from the structure, methane pockets, mass suggestion in a high-stress environment. I filed the reports, kept the men focused, and pushed us toward the last objective. The command nucleus, deepest part of the complex. Once that was cleared, we could exfil. The nucleus sat below the lower level, behind its own dedicated blast door at the end of a short spur corridor. Heavier construction than the rest. Triple dogs, combination wheel, secondary hydraulic seals. No welds on this one. It had been shut properly from the outside like the designers intended. We set charges around the lock mechanism, controlled breach. The door groaned open into absolute blackness. Stale air rolled out, colder than the rest of the bunker, carrying a faint ozone smell like old electrical burn. Inside, the room was surprisingly intact. Circular console bank in the center, auxiliary screens around the walls, paper maps under cracked perspex covers showing NATO air corridors and missile trajectories from the 1980s. Red emergency chem lights still glowed faintly along the baseboards, some chemical reaction triggered by our entry. It painted everything in a dim crimson wash. We spread out, cataloging, documents in locked drawers, launch authentication codes long obsolete, Contingency orders for Siberian district in case of decapitation strike, all photographed and bagged. Then Alexei found the body. It was seated at the central command table, slumped forward in a captain's uniform, skin desiccated, drawn tight, over bone like leather, uniform perfectly preserved, insignia bright. A Makarov pistol lay on the table in front of the right hand. Single entry wound, temple. No exit spatter on the far wall. Small caliber, subsonic maybe. A logbook was open beneath the left arm. Petrov checked for booby traps, then carefully lifted the book. Pages brittle but readable. Entries ran from 1989 to early 1992. Routine at first, readiness drills, maintenance schedules. Then shorter, strained, supply delays, morale issues. Reports of personnel hearing voices during long shifts. Arguments over evacuation rumors. Final entry dated 3 days after official abandonment orders reached the bunker. Crew refusing to leave. Hallucinations worsening. Whispers, apparitions in barracks. Some claim to see fallen comrades from Afghanistan calling them to stay. Isolation psychosis probable, but spreading. Sealed nucleus to contain. If anyone reads this, do not reopen the upper levels. Whatever was pulled in through the ventilation tests in 91 did not leave with us. Ventilation tests. No record of those in the main logs. We stood in silence reading it. The implications settled heavy. Then the lights failed, not flickered, cut out completely. Portable LEDs, headlamps, weapon lights, all dead at once. Batteries had been fresh. Absolute darkness, the kind that presses on your eyes. Whispers rose immediately, not from ducts or walls this time, from inside the room. Dozens, hundreds of voices, overlapping. Stay with us. Duty remains. The motherland still needs defenders. Join the watch. Cold flooded in. Sharp, biting drop that burned exposed skin. Frost formed on our rifles in seconds. Shapes materialized in the red chem glow, translucent at first, then solidifying. Soldiers in old Soviet kit, greatcoats, ushankas, Afghanka uniforms, standing at parade rest around the consoles. Faces gaunt but calm. Eyes empty. One stepped forward, the captain from the table, now standing. He looked directly at me and saluted, slow and precise. Ivanov lost it. "Brothers!" he shouted, voice cracking. He took a step toward them, arms out. Volkov and Alexei tackled him, dragged him back. The figures didn't move, just watched. We fired warning bursts. Rounds passed straight through, ricochets sparking off consoles. No reaction. "Retrograde," I ordered. "Back to the door." We moved in pairs, covering arcs that made no sense anymore. Ivanov fought us, babbling about finally being relieved. Petrov sedated him with a slap patch. At the threshold, the cold eased. Lights snapped back on as we crossed. Batteries fine again. We dogged the nucleus door shut from outside and welded it this time. No discussion needed. Surface comms finally cleared the storm window. Exfil helo inbound at first light. But as we climbed the stairs to the middle level to wait, bootsteps echoed behind us, measured, unhurried, not ours. Something had followed us out of the nucleus. And it wasn't done. Chapter 6. The Armory Anomaly. Volkov again. After welding the nucleus door shut, we thought we had contained it. Whatever was down there, the voices, the figures, the captain's final warning, we had sealed it behind half a meter of steel. We pulled back to the middle level to wait for the exfil window, barricaded in the mess hall, weapons loaded and facing the stairwell. No one slept. The storm topside was supposed to break at dawn. We had maybe 4 hours. Ivanov was out cold from the sedative patch, breathing steady but muttering in his sleep about relief finally coming. The rest of us sat in a loose circle, lights low to save batteries, sharing the last of the hot brew from thermoses. That's when Alexei noticed it. One of our spare magazines was missing from his kit. 30 rounds, 5.45, standard ball. He had counted twice before the nucleus breach. Now gone. Could have dropped it in the scramble, Orlov said, but we all knew better. Nothing got left behind in a retrograde like that. We tear-checked pouches and the floor around us. Nothing. We chalked it up to one more unexplained loss and tightened security. An hour later, Dmitri picked up faint movement on the motion sensor we had rigged at the barracks corridor entrance. Just a blip, single contact, slow. We swept the hall in force. Empty. But one of the side doors we had cleared days earlier was now ajar. the auxiliary armory. We had tagged it on the first sweep, standard small arms storage for the garrison, racks of AK-74s, crates of ammo, grenades, and sealed boxes. Door had been dogged open then, contents undisturbed except for dust. Now it stood open wider, as if inviting us in. Orlov gave the nod. We stacked and entered. The racks were still there, rifles hanging like skeletons, but the floor crates had been moved again. Heavy wooden boxes dragged into neat stacks forming firing positions. Two-man teams, fields of fire covering every approach. Someone with tactical knowledge had built a deliberate defense. In the center of the room, on the bare concrete, lay a perfect circle of old blood, flaked brown, long dried, maybe from a training accident decades ago. We had photographed it on the first pass, but now, placed exactly in the middle of that circle, was Alexei's missing magazine. Polymer, 30 rounds still inside, our modern camo tape marking still on it. No dust on the top, no scuffs from being dragged. Petrov knelt, gloved hand hovering. No prints in the dust leading to it, just appears. Behind us, from the doorway, came the clearest whisper yet, not echoing from walls or ducts, direct, like someone standing at our shoulders. Orужие na место. Weapons in place, we spun. Empty corridor. Then the bootsteps started, multiple sets marching in cadence down the main barracks hall, not hurried. Parade ground pace, coming toward the armory. We fell back into the mess, hauled the barricade tables tight. The marching stopped right outside our door. Silence. Dmitri's radio hissed. Again, this time not marches, actual traffic, old Soviet-era net, call signs from the 1980s. Fragments, post 7 to command, standing by. Relief overdue, holding position. Request permission to stand down. Negative, maintain alert. Then our own SatLink crackled alive. Helo crew confirming ETA 30 mics, storm clearing. The marching resumed, away from us this time, back down the corridor, deeper into the complex. Fading toward the stairwell, we waited. No more sounds. When the winch cables finally dropped through the blast door shaft at dawn, we moved fast. Ivanov half carried between Volkov and me. Kit bagged, charges set on sensitive leftovers. As the helo lifted, rotor wash blasting snow across the hillside, I looked down one last time. The camouflaged entrance stood open like a black mouth. For a split second in the swirling white, I thought I saw them. Rows of figures in greatcoats lining the tree line, motionless, watching us go, saluting. Then the storm closed over everything. The bunker was resealed from the surface by follow-on engineers. Higher classification now, no further entries authorized. Some places aren't abandoned, they're still occupied. Chapter 7, Extraction and Aftermath. This is a composite of the team's final accounts. By the time the exfil bird arrived, we were running on fumes and adrenaline. No one had slept more than snatches in almost 30 hours. Ivanov was still groggy from the sedative, slung between Volkov and Alexei as we climbed the access ladder to the surface. The rest of us covered arcs the whole way, expecting something to come boiling up the stairwell behind us. The storm had broken just enough for the Mi-8 to get in low. Rotor wash blasted snow horizontally across the hillside as the winch cables dropped. We hooked in fast, 2 at a time, standard cold weather extraction. I was on the last lift with Orlov. As the helo pulled pitch and banked away, I looked back down through the open door. For a moment, through the swirling white, the tree line seemed to shift. Dark shapes, dozens of them, stood in perfect formation just beyond the tree line, greatcoats flapping in the downdraft. Motionless, watching, some raised arms in salute. Then the snow closed over the ridge like a curtain, and the bunker was gone. Debrief was in a secure hangar at Novosibirsk. Separate interviews first, then group. Official line came down quick. Anomalies attributed to prolonged exposure to confined space, elevated CO2 and radon, possible infrasound from structural settling. Psychological stress factors noted. All of us ordered for medical eval and mandatory rest. Ivanov was medevaxed straight to a psychiatric facility in Moscow. Diagnosis: acute stress reaction with psychotic features. He never returned to the brigade. The rest of us were scattered. New assignments, quiet discharges for some. No one was encouraged to talk about the op outside secure channels. The bunker itself was resealed by a follow-on. Engineering unit. New welds, concrete plugs, higher classifications slapped on the file. As far as the system is concerned, Complex 47K is once again just another forgotten hole in the permafrost. But we know different. Months later, Petrov sent a group message. Short, no details. He had woken in the night to bootsteps in his apartment hallway. Slow, measured, stopped right outside his door. When he checked, empty. But frost had formed on the inside of the peephole, a perfect circle like breath from the other side. Dmitri reported picking up old Soviet call signs on his ham rig late at night. Faint, buried under static. Always the same. Post 7 holding, awaiting relief. I still hear them sometimes. Footsteps in the barracks of whatever base I'm posted to. Always at the edge of hearing. Always stopping when I turn. Orlov retired early. Word is he bought a small dacha out in the middle of nowhere. No neighbors for kilometers. Says he sleeps better with the quiet. Was it mass psychosis triggered by toxic air and isolation, some kind of shared delusion among hardened operators? Maybe. Modern kit. Full psych evals before deployment. We weren't the type to crack easy. Or maybe some duties don't end just because the orders stop coming. Maybe when you build a place to withstand the end of the world and then walk away from it, something stays behind to keep watch. Something that doesn't understand the war is over. Something that mistakes any new arrival for the relief column that never came. The Siberian taiga is full of these sites. Hundreds of bunkers, silos, listening posts, all sealed up in the 90s and left to rot. Most will stay buried forever, but a few might still be occupied, not by the living, by men who never got the order to stand down. If you ever find yourself near an old Soviet installation out there, camouflage doors half buried in a ridge, no tracks in the snow for decades, keep walking. Some posts aren't abandoned, they're still manned, and they're waiting.